dig my grave if it's mine to choose. Feels like there's nothing left for me to lose. I'll dig my grave. How many times I've got to tell you I'm all caught up in bad advice? So many times I've had to hear you say, you know what you gotta do. I used to hang on to words and make my sting if you stung me first, but I passed upon a needing you to understand my views. It gets lonely, but I've learned by now there's more emptiness in the smiles you're forced to wear. I dig my grave if it's not to choose. Feels like there's nothing left for me to lose. I dig my grave. There's that obsession again.
Every time I'm in charge. No! There it is. Wow. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday Show. It's always a disaster when I'm the producer, so thank you for joining us. We have Paul Staley with us, who is a new correspondent. We're going to be talking about an article he wrote today. We're also going to be talking about the Toyota lockdown, comparison of a research paper of mental illness by political ideology that I found interesting. And of course, we're going to be going through the data again on surge capacity and where the hospitals are at to try to give true accounts of what's going on there. So how is and no more lockdowns. So we were there yesterday. So that's going to be on the topic here today. So let's get into it. Got to show everybody that the hospitals aren't overwhelmed. I'm going to continually be posting. I might go daily, but at least weekly with the data from this system in Ontario to give a snapshot of what's really happening in the hospitals. So let's pull that up. So KFLNA, these guys do Ontario Acute Care Surge Monitoring as well as General Emergency Department Monitoring. So I wanted to give an account here, but I'm on the wrong one. I want to show, here we are. Nope, back one more. I was looking through all the data. So this is the overall picture of Ontario by, emergent emissions. This is what we want. And so this is emergent emissions by today. So as you can see, predominantly majority of Ontario is green. We have a few hospitals that are problematic. Red means above 90% surge capacity or equal to. Orange is 70 to 90%. So you would say maybe of concern. And yellow is 50 to 70, I believe it is. And then under that is green. So 50% or under is green. But that's the snapshot of the picture in Ontario. And the last one there, number of hospitals by surge capacity last hour, 132 Ontario hospitals, less than 50% surge capacity, and 10 at 50 to 70, only 2 at 90% or greater. So those are the numbers on that. And obviously, we're getting a different conversation on that. But I want to get your thoughts on this, Paul, because I just was in the car and listening to the radio, and I think something has changed in the general demeanor of people. I don't think people are buying the narrative the way they used to. And they were talking about the suffering of business on the radio for a change. They were talking about the vaccine effectiveness only being so many weeks. And then they were actually talking about if things don't change soon and the communication doesn't get better, people are just going to take off the mask and basically resume life as normal. So even they're acknowledging that something's different. So I thought, it was AM 900. For anybody in Ontario here, and that's what I was listening to right before I hopped on, and that's what they were talking about. It really caught me off guard, but I think, in my opinion, something's changed maybe. I want to get your take on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, the vibe is changing for sure. People are starting to wake up and see that, like, This one, everybody's like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's not helping, clearly. Everybody knows it but them. They even said like 2 weeks ago that like these lockdowns are harmful. And then they threw us into another one right after, right? So I don't know. People are getting pissed off. They're tired of it. It's not working. You're basically just forcing small businesses out of business and not actually solving any problems in doing it. So it's ignorant at this point to do this. And we have the same information that they have. We're doing this based upon modeling of which that has been incorrect the entirety of the pandemic. Even their lower ends have been incorrect. I think
Absolutely.
last time we locked down, we were at like 2,000 cases a day. They said their lower end modeling was like 6,000 and their higher end was 20,000 cases a day. We didn't hit either of those numbers. So not even close.
No, and
the low end was 3 times the amount, obviously, right? So
we haven't even come close. And I wanted to bring this back full around. So one of the modelers of for Ontario is Ryan Immigrant. And on Twitter, he was coming after the No More Lockdowns crowd, specifically on this modeling. Was like, he basically said there's a 100% guaranteed chance of exposure to COVID at that event, is what he said based on the numbers. And I'm imagining his model is based on garbage in, garbage out. So if there's stuff that's coming in that's not based on accurate information, that's garbage in. And I would imagine it's a model based on indoor transmission, based on a certain amount of asymptomatic transmission and a certain amount of symptomatic transmission that maybe not reflective of the actual scenario we're experiencing. But he basically said, yes, it's going to be a guaranteed super spreader event. And that's one of the Ontario's COVID data modelers. And so, of course, when you have that narrative from the government and government staff, it's like there is no middle ground. They're calling me a bad person because I want businesses to be able to remain open. And I personally think people have just had enough. I mean, the writing's on the wall, as somebody said here. Businesses can't take on any more debt. It was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, not 2 years to annihilate this virus to whenever we said it was safe. It's like people had it in their mind. It was a set amount of time to do this thing. And we're all in this together. It's going to suck, but we can do it. And then you kept dragging the goalpost along with you and moving the net. And now businesses are seeing it for what it is. And Canadians in general are seeing it for what it is, I think. And I think I've seen that at the No More Lockdowns rally, but I want to go into that next. So you watched the live stream. It was kind of crazy. So they delayed it because so many people were coming, Paul, that they had to delay it for the speakers. They were crossing the street, couldn't find parking, so they're coming across. I would say 1,000 to 2,000 people, easy. And
yeah, I think like most online accounts I saw were 2,000 to 3,000 people. Yeah, it's hard to approximate crowds like that.
Always.
But it filled a parking lot, very sizable parking lot. I know where you were in Brantford, so yeah, that's a sizable parking lot. Of course, everybody parked at the government building because they're not working.
Yeah,
which I found comical.
Yeah, well, that was one of the ways
courteous.
They were trying. Yeah, they were trying to be accommodative by parking at the government parking because nobody was there. So they didn't want to interrupt business as usual. So they parked where the government would normally park because nobody's doing anything down there. So it was parking for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, as soon as I heard that, I was like, that's funny.
I was pleasantly surprised. It was a really good turnout. The takeaway for me is like, that was a turnout that was similar to Toronto. And I just for people that may be new to Diverge Media, I was covering the protest in Toronto for months. I'd been to 4 or 5 different events over the course of a couple of months, and I'd seen them. And I would compare what I seen yesterday to one of those events in Toronto in the heat of the summer. And it was cold and it was windy and people still showed up. So I really do think something shifted. We had over 500 people on the live stream at one point. I found it funny. Part of the Ryan Immigrant and gang calling out the event in Brantford and concerns about super spreading was that the media that I seen there's a few media that were walking around with masks and things like that. But most of the media was actually maskless. And I'm not talking independent media. I'm talking what would be deemed mainstream media. So the cameramen were outside. I don't know how they covered the event. I haven't seen those stories. Maybe you have. But basically, they're not masked up. But if it's being shared as a super spreader event and masks help prevent the spread, then why weren't your cameramen masked up? Was one of the things I took away and thought I'd mention.
Well, I mean, they're outdoors. Like, maybe they have more common sense than they spew out every day. Like, outdoors is, every doctor out there is urging the government to encourage outdoor gatherings because it's better than indoor gatherings, and people are going to gather indoors regardless. So I don't know about you, but like driving down the streets in my neighborhood over this weekend, it was packed with just get-togethers. You could tell, but there's cars littered on the streets. There's definitely people getting together for Easter. So yeah, I think people are just done with it. I think the one thing that killed them was the business closures, is that people are just pissed off about it. Like, I can put 1,100 people into a Costco, but I can't have 20 in a church. You know what I mean? Like, these just like favoritism throughout the whole thing, and people see it for what it is. I was reading today, there's a government official out west that said you couldn't dine indoors, but you could do wine tasting indoors, and then later they find out she owns a winery. So these are the types of things that happen year in year, like for the year, all the time. You hear these little things. Oh, he worked for the NHL, and now the NHL can play in Canada, and it's like, yep, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. Essential businesses were defined by, hey, nobody owns any of these guys. Like, in this room, no one owns any of these businesses. Okay, perfect. We'll close these ones.
Yeah, it's the things that people don't know about. You just referenced something on Ontario Science COVID, Ontario Science or COVID Science Table. I don't know what they call it, but basically those guys that inform the government there's one guy that was getting consult fees. I'll see if I can pull it up for everyone later here, but he's getting consult fees from the NHL. And then we find out that the NHL can play, but it's not okay for your kids to go play. That's not safe. But the guy, there's nothing related apparently, but the guy that got paid consult fees who informs the government, the NHL gets their approval. That's called lobbying. Just for the record, that's what you would call lobbying in a traditional political sense, but it's not when he's on a science table and it's indirectly informing the policy.
That's why they follow the money, right?
Easier said than done, though. Sorry, do we lose you here? Sometimes
your audio's cutting in.
Yeah, man, this Kitchener internet has been weird lately. It's like the last few days I've been having issues. It dropped completely in the middle of a stream the other day, and I supposedly have super high speed internet, guys, but welcome to Kitchener, where it doesn't matter if you have 70-year-old lines. You can have the best package. Doesn't mean you're getting what you pay for. But sorry about that. You want to continue your thought there?
Yeah, no, follow the money. Like,
I think
that's where we're at right now, right? Like, if you see all these guys on the science table with how many conflicts of interest they have and who they're working for, and right now Fissman's still on there, and he worked for the teachers union advocating for closures of schools, and he still sits on that board. Yeah. They don't even provide data. They just provide models, and people are supposed to just accept it as fact. Like, well, where are you pulling this information from? Yeah. They won't tell you for whatever reason, because they don't release data. That and environmental doesn't release data. So you saw a certain tweet go out the other day that said, the data we have says that hospitals are being overwhelmed in Toronto. And then later, that when they were pressed about the data, they changed that tweet to, we're hearing, to get rid of the data spiel, because they have no data, because we checked and there was nothing overwhelmed in Toronto.
It's a manipulation game. I can make, guys, I would be the best. The government, if I was evil, they would have a great person in me, because I know exactly how to do what they're doing. I find the most overrun hospital or two in all of Ontario. And then I say, guys, I see that we're being overrun. I hear that. we're being overrun. Well, that's true. It's 100% true. I talked to only the 2 hospitals I knew that were overrun. And then I left out the other 90 or 150, whatever there was, that were in a good shape, good capacity.
Have you been following CTV today and yesterday? There's a teacher, who is maybe 40s in ICU. They've recycled that story on social media probably about 4 times now.
I wonder why we don't trust them.
You know what I mean? Like, they're pushing a narrative. It's quite obvious. Like, I'm like, this story is popping up again, and it's reworded. So it's just like presented a different way, and I think it's definitely CTV, and I think one other, maybe CP24, were pushing this story and then quoting the doctors that, it's an unfortunate situation. And it's like, okay, you can't project one situation and try to make it seem as if that's 100% factual for everyone. Viruses only mutate 0.3% from the original. So, like, I was reading today, there's like 250 or 2,500, don't quote me on that, mutations from the original SARS. And, like, people aren't dropping dead in the streets from that, right? Like, I sent you that study.
We had a comment here. I think I'd like to address it, but you can think and feel what you want, but ICU overrun is true. I work in them. And this is, Kyle, you probably work in an ICU that's overrun, but I just showed the ICU capacity, surge capacity across Ontario. Like, 80% of hospitals are in good shape. And by the way, even if that is true, it doesn't mean you shut down all the businesses, take away livelihoods, and then further put more stresses on the health system because there's less taxable income in the future because you lost taxable income from shutting down businesses. And then you put even more stress on the system because people don't have jobs, which puts their health at risk because they're going to eat crappier foods. And then you put even more stress down the road, 10, 20 years for heart disease and things like that, all the missed cancer screenings. So this is a bigger picture than just health and ICU. So I say all that to say, again, this is about not making decisions in a vacuum. It's about seeing everything and then making the decision.
The one thing you didn't mention either is 1% of unemployment equals 2% increase in suicides. So that's another reason not to drive people out of work.
See, I haven't been able to verify that one. I've heard mixed papers on it. That's why I don't reference it anymore. But I do know there is a correlation.
Stats Canada has been tracking it for a while. That's where I got that information. And I know Pierre gave questions at the House a while ago citing that as well.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things. Overrun is not new. So see if I can find it in my article here. But basically, CBC did an article on the state of Ontario hospitals prior to COVID actually happening. And it was released in January 2020. And I studied, I believe it was between January and June of 2019. But the point of all of that is to say they were overrun then. That's pre-COVID. So did we forget that the premier here? Yeah, he had a whole year and he ran on ending hallway medicine. This isn't a new problem, but they've manipulated the narrative so much so that, like, is it a problem? Yes, but it's a manageable problem. And it's not one that they've made it out to be, which is like, I'm a terrible person for wanting to live life and love people again. So it's just kind of nuts to me. I had the numbers here. I'm going to pull them. So go ahead.
Had a whole year to accommodate additional ICUs. They haven't. Like, I don't know. You've had a whole year, a whole damn year to fix this issue. You keep going back to the well. It's dry. People don't care anymore. They don't want to be in lockdown anymore. Fix it. You didn't. You had a whole year.
Yeah, the well's dry. You can't keep going back to it's your fault. You're the problem. Guys, it's been a consistent problem. The healthcare system in Canada, wake up, guys. It's been a consistent problem for 20, 30 years. Long-term care and retirement facilities specifically were an issue for a long time. They've known about those. They've had those issues. And then we've had an entire year to increase ICU capacity. And they were just talking about this on the radio. That was one of the conversations. Well, we allegedly increased like 500 or 1,500 beds. And then we only have 400 in the COVID patients in ICU in all of Ontario. So isn't that just the extra beds? The issue is anti-mask people. Well, it depends what you mean by anti-mask. The mask was actually fought in 2015 and 2018 in court. and thrown out because it wasn't effective in preventing transmission of influenza to the patient or the nurse. That was Ontario Nursing Association.
The mask we're wearing, recent studies, like the cloth mask, double thick, 1.8% effective over population, and that study didn't account for social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, sure, it has some effect, but like, I mean, I don't rock with the anti-mask crowd just because people like to just focus on that instead of the real issues here. They just see that you're totally anti everything, and it's like they have their minds made up. You have your mind made up. I just want, like we've said this numerous times, cost-benefit analysis. Let's sit down and have a real conversation about this. Was right now we're not getting one. Right now we're getting one story. All of them are from U of T. All of them have the same opinion, and all of them are feeding it to every single one of us.
Yeah, so Glenn just mentioned the study we're referring to here, Kyle. And again, I'm not trying to bash you. It's just you've brought in a very relevant point. There's so much gaslighting going on. I just want to have a debate about it. But obviously different perspectives here coming from different worlds. But it's CDC study is the reference here. And it was 1.3 to 1.8% effective in reducing cases. And they say overall mortality, but they didn't account for a lot of factors in there. They didn't include social distancing. They weren't watching that. They weren't watching the adherence to the actual policy. But that's best case scenario. That's the CDC putting it out there. That's like 1.8%. And when we talk about cost benefit analysis, to give you a different perspective here, we're coming from, well, what's the cost of wearing a mask? People will say there's no cost. I think that's the pro-mask crowd. The anti-mask crowd will say that they're absolutely detrimental. And I think that, well, there is some benefit, but it's not enough to merit anything. And the detrimental cost is for kids in their developmental stages. It's adults who aren't talking anymore in small talk. Because if you're socially awkward, you're muffling your speech, and you can't read those micro expressions. So if you already have a hard time, I think, meeting people and talking to people, that's even more diminished right now. And those are going to be societal consequences down the road if they're not addressed right now. And they're already going to be consequential because it's gone on for so long. But I want to get your take on that, Paul.
Well, in terms of a cost-benefit analysis, it goes further than that. It goes to economic fallout. What industry do we have? Okay, so if all these business owners are claiming bankruptcy, okay, this property reverts back to who? The bank? So now it's up for sale again. Who's buying this then? Are Canadians coming in and buying it? Because we got no money right now. So now foreign investors are coming in and buying it. Mm-hmm. So it's like now you've basically relegated the Canadian citizen to middle class or below because they can no longer be business owners because they can't buy business properties, or at best you rent it. There's like everything needs to be turned over. It's like, what's the cost of having kids learn from home? Well, the cost of that is 80% of kids are failing 2 or more classes.
Yeah,
that's the cost because there's distractions at home. There's a lack of effort to get, like, there's parents struggling. Like, you imagine your parents trying to figure out this and they don't use any technology ever, and they're trying to figure out how to get you onto like these chats with your teacher and then like mute, unmute, have you pay attention, have you actually do your homework, do presentations. Numerous kids, they got a full-time job on top of that. Like, just the cost of doing all of this. What is the cost of doing appointments only for car sales? Well, I would imagine sales would be down. Well, what's that look like for the auto sector? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just like there's so much more to this. Public health's job is literally to look at all harms, not just one. We're looking at a microscope directly at COVID, pull our heads up. Let's look around at the other devastation that's going on. Let's make a decision, cost-benefit analysis, what is best now, 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't think there's like, you can't even argue me on that. You can't. You cannot argue me on that because it is just the thing that makes most sense. We need to quit talking like COVID is the biggest thing in the world right now. Yes. It's causing so many more problems than it's fixing.
Like,
all these lockdowns, all of this, that.
Yeah, well, there's a video going around, and we're going to actually talk about a research paper that talks about lockdowns not being beneficial. But there's a video going viral right now of a guy. It's like an underground meeting, I think, right? And he goes, "Hey, just out of curiosity here," and this is real people. This is a whole crowd in front of you, just talking with real people, not polls, nothing. Okay, just what I can see visually. How many people have had somebody sick or die of COVID? Raise your hands. Like, no hands went up. Like, none. How many have had somebody miss a cancer screening? How have had somebody have lost somebody due to other health consequences during COVID? How many have lost somebody that can't? And it's just like there's other things that are drastically more important right now. We didn't know initially. We all panicked. We didn't know. I was in the same boat. We had our kid from home because we didn't know. We didn't want to go to the hospital. Like, man, this thing out here nobody knows. I saw people dropping dead in China. I was like, man, I'm not taking my chances. My newborn, is more important. And my fatherly instincts kicked in. We were all there, but the data's out.
Yep. We were stockpiling toilet paper just like everybody else. I mean, I wasn't, but some people were. But we were all scared. We were all fearful. But now we know what this is. We know how to battle it. The one thing that we, again, cost-benefit analysis, we haven't even looked at is ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, vitamin D. Why is the Canadian government not talking about any of these things?
So we got another one.
They're only pushing one narrative, and that's lockdown. Wait till the vaccine, wait till you return, get it, and go on with your life.
So 25,000 Canadians are dead. I actually think that's a high estimate. But we also know that the government of Canada literally put out a release saying that we, at the beginning, we're seeing more deaths in elderly people, which is, they believe, result from COVID. And now we're seeing more deaths in other categories as a result of lockdowns themselves. So if you're concerned about the death count, maybe have a conversation about the lockdown. All right. So this whole narrative, guys, this whole spin of fear and stuff, it's done. It's just going to be having blunt, real conversations, like cost-benefit analysis. I'm glad you're coming in here and having these conversations. But yes, it's very concerning. People die every year, but this is what cost-benefit analysis is. It's not making a decision based on emotion. It's looking at the whole picture. I want the best overall health for my country, my nation, for the future, not just today. Even if lockdowns were great and solved everything today, you have to look at everything not in a microscope or a vacuum, but 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20 year, 50 year. What does that look like? And so I think personally, the measures today are going to hurt us much more than they're helping, and they already have. And I think the evidence pans that out, but let's move on here. I want to get into your article because what a great pivot then to shift to Texas. Everything is bigger in Texas, including freedom.
Their population.
Right, you want to introduce your article?
Yeah, I mean, the article you put out this morning, I guess, which is in a very, not much of a deep dive, but a bit of a snippet into what's going on in Texas, what's going on here, comparing the two, and seeing if we can look at these things and learn something from them. Like I said in the article, we have the advantage, I guess, but not really, that we're behind them by miles. But having said that, we should, make lemonade out of those lemons and figure out, like, hey, what are they doing? And if you deep dive into it and you start looking at their case counts, start looking at their positive rates, they're vaccinated. We're damn near on par with how many they've vaccinated in terms of percent of population. At least one dose, according to the COVID-19 tracker. So we're at about, I think it was 14%, just a little over 14%. They're at about 16%. They have zero restrictions right now. Their cases continue to decline. Our cases continue to go up. They have a population that's more than double ours. Their daily case counts are actually lower than ours right now. So they're obviously, like, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, we're shutting that part of the world out. Again, like, another thing is UK. We aren't hearing anything about them anymore because their numbers are the lowest that they've been in 6 months. So it's like, we're only going to hear the negatives. And I just wanted to point out, like, can we pull information from this and say, for our population, we've vaccinated damn near the same amount that they have in terms of their percent. Could we potentially, take the training wheels off here and lift these lockdowns? And I mentioned namely the business closures to be like we're right there. I'm just trying to figure out, we talked about this last week, like, what's that number then? Yeah. What's that number of vaccinated people before we start pulling the training wheels off?
Well, and so there's the dichotomy. We're within like 1.5% of their vaccine percentage of people vaccinated, if that's the go-to. And they've removed the mask mandate. They've removed their restrictions. And for somebody in here, where are you getting your information? It's all directly sourced from the government of Canada, COVID science table, COVID-19 data, Ontario. It's all linked in our articles. You can go down the rabbit hole if you want to, but I'm not going to spoon feed one person here in a comment section. As far as this one, this comes from daily.co.uk, which is a very established newspaper that talked about it. And then we wrote on that. At least that was a kick. Well, there's a bunch of people that wrote about it. That was the kickstart for it. So Texas removes all that. And Biden literally came out and said, like, that's a Neanderthal move. You're going to kill a bunch of people. And what happens? 17 consecutive days of reduced cases, lowest hospitalization since it was October, I believe. And guess what, guys?
6 months.
No mask, no restrictions. It's like they said the sky would fall, Chicken Little, and then it didn't fall. And that's 17 plus states, and there's 18 states now that have removed restrictions, removed the mask mandate. Meanwhile, we have the dichotomy here in Canada where we don't get to have even the option to have an opinion about lockdown.
Can't even suggest it. Like, that's the difference is, like, Doug Ford's talking about jumping off a bridge with a rope around his neck if he goes against his health officials. And Texas did the exact opposite. And they got ripped apart publicly. I think it was Vanity Fair that said, you know, they're just like, I can't remember the exact quote, but they basically said, you know, they're in a race to see with Mississippi to see who can kill more people. And then obviously they've been charting it still. They still have the ability to go get tested. They're still like, if you need to be hospitalized, you're not going to the hospital. So you can't hide the numbers, right? Like, so numbers are still declining. They're the lowest since June, I believe. Death count's incredibly low. Again, their population is twice ours. They've vaccinated the same amount. Case counts are better than ours. Like, numbers lie, people do. These numbers are there, and like, they're from legit sources. If you Google COVID-19 Texas right now, you're going to get results from Google that come right from the New York Times that you can click on the link and you can see that they track everything, and that's where they're getting their data from down there. So
yeah, so
argue it all you want, like, that's what's going on. Like,
this is why I'm laughing at these comments. It's like, now you're nitpicking the things that you think might win you back, because you're not nitpicking the argument. But this is funny to me. You're seeing the tip of the iceberg. YouTube and Facebook aren't what I drive traffic to. My website is where I drive traffic. First off. Secondly, on the accredited thing, are you saying that only people that get a journalistic degree can be educated enough to form an opinion? And by the way, one of the co-owners here is a Dean's Honored journalist from Conestoga College, but whatever. There you go. I deleted your other comment because I thought it was rather ill-informed and rude, truthfully. But there you go. Yeah, you got your comment on, and we're going to ignore you again. Moving on here. I want to pull this up. This is that lockdown research paper I'm talking about. So this is published in the Lancet. Oops, it helps if I have up what I'm looking at, eh? So a country-level analysis measuring the impact of government actions, country preparedness, socioeconomic factors on COVID-19 mortality and related health outcomes. So published July 21st, 2020. So we came here March, April, May, June, July. So number of months, there would be enough data you can make an assessment. Rapid border closures, full lockdowns, and widespread testings were not associated with COVID-19 mortality per million people. However, they come around and say this doesn't make it sound good. Full lockdowns and reduced country vulnerability to biological threats. So it's really the second one that's the difference maker, not the first one. But because countries are locking down, we're going to include that in the verbiage, even though we just said it doesn't do anything up here. So this is what they do. But however, full lockdowns and reduced country vulnerability to biological threats on a global scale were significantly associated with increased patient recovery rates. So they go on to say low levels of national preparedness, scale of testing, and population characteristics were associated with increased national load and overall mortality. Now, in the study itself, I believe they also talk about other factors included basically the overall health, like obesity, if it was high there, the overall age. So Italy, as an example, gets hammered, right? In 2013 to 2016, I believe, they were having epidemic influenza levels to the point of it was on par with the excess death of the Second World War. And there was research papers come out putting this out. And they say they were concerned going forward because they have an aged population, basically saying they're vulnerable. So this is what this research paper points to. Lockdowns, no benefit. But if you're prepared, you can test, you have adequate Another one was healthcare capacity. Surprise, right? Adequate healthcare capacity. But basically, if you have a really aged population, Italy, they are not in good health. Italy, they all like to smoke, a lot of them, right? And so that was like, and we used Italy as the reason democratic nations should lock down here. At least that was my take on it. But what do you take on the Italy thing, like, and the age and the lockdowns, how this all plays in together? Because that was published in the Lancet, and they're saying no benefit, but then they point out some other things there.
Yeah, I mean, like, if it gets to, like we said, that access to healthcare, right? So if it gets to a point where you actually are overwhelming hospital, you don't have access to healthcare, even if you're in the hospital. So that's how, like, body counts can add up, right? Like, but with the case with Italy was like, you know, the same way the far right reaches for things that extremely support their ideas, the far left was searching for it in Canada, specifically Ontario on the science table. One of the things that they were looked at was Italy and said, look at how scary this is. But like you said, in 2013, 2016, they had a flu epidemic. So this isn't new for that country. They are hit hard by these things. Why that is, we'd have to dig deeper into it. I haven't looked into it too much because Italy's kind of been, it was like last year that we were talking about that and how crazy it was as a way to kind of convince our population to do what we're doing. I mean, this was the best idea that they came up with out of the gate, right? But we haven't pivoted at all. And we haven't looked at a different alternative. We haven't even looked at ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, vitamin D, zinc, things of that nature. We haven't looked at that at all, keeping people in the hospital when all they have to do is get something mailed to their house that they can just throw in their mouth in the morning and go about their day. Like, we haven't looked at any of that. So if we're looking at Italy and then lockdowns, it's like, well, the body count kept adding up in Italy while they were locked down, and the people who were healthy were mad about it and angry and breaking violations, and the people who were actually sick weren't getting health care. It was like, that's what we want to do. Like, that's the goal. So like when the Chinese did it, it worked perfectly. They haven't had any cases in how long? We believe that.
Yeah.
So we
don't
believe China on that. It's exactly what I was going to say, but we don't believe them when they do a 10 million person asymptomatic spread test.
Yeah.
We don't believe that, but we believe that those lockdowns worked. I don't understand the angle. I don't, other than to convince people that, like, this works. We're scaring you with this, this, and this. Like, again, let's just have a conversation from both sides. Let's spit facts. Like, let's not pander to fear, and let's talk facts, and we'll look and let it fall where it falls and come up with the best solution. But like, numerous studies from the people who told us these things would work, studies came out after the fact that told us they didn't. Yeah. And then we were supposed to just ignore that and pretend like they didn't exist. Like, that's where the frustration is. And people are starting to, like, wise up to that. They're starting to see it, and they're just like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Like, it takes like 2 hours of your Saturday. You could sit here and research, and you could find a study that tells you this is BS, this is BS, this is BS. And what do you want to do? Do you want to bicker about how let's not do this, or do you want to actually sit down at the table and come up with a solution? But like, we're not even allowed to do that because the people in power on the left right now, the liberals, just want to slam lockdowns down our throats, and they don't want to have that conversation. So we don't get to have it.
Well, in fairness, it's conservatives too, right? It's everyone. Politicians in general, like you said, they just haven't pivoted. They were handed some ideas on how to handle this thing, and then they didn't change the approach. And we've covered the origins of social distancing, how that came from a literal 15-year-old science project. It was something they thought might help because they didn't know what they were getting into. And it's all these little things, like you say, that they add up, and eventually people just look at it and they go, I can't take you seriously anymore. It's like the kid who cried wolf, or the
it's like every couple of days we see another like contradiction in policy and what's actually happening, and people are quick to point it out now, and they don't ever want to go like, well, here's the data we pulled it from. They don't do that. So you're not doing a great job at like drumming up public trust by hiding things, by changing tweets, by having places release studies that don't support what you're doing, that told you that that's what you should be doing. It's just like, The armor is very, very beat up at this point, and it's very exposed, and there's lots of holes in it. Every single guy involved has holes in it. They have conflicts of interest. Their modeling has been wrong from start to finish, low end and high end. It's just like, people know now. The jig's up, guys. Like, let's have a conversation.
That's like I said, you got Ryan Imgren. He's an Ontario data modeler saying there's 100% chance of COVID exposure at the outdoor event yesterday, just based on a model. X amount of people gather X%. And it's just, stop, man. Like, you guys, Roman Baber hit you guys in the head with this in the house. Like, you haven't been right once. Even on, like, when you were close to it, you're still below your lowest projections. And then you come out and you drive fear on that. And then you did that once and twice. And now it's like the third time, but it's more than that because they've been doing this nonstop for over a year. And people are just like, nah, I'm going to live life. Like, you can try to.
You saw the protests in Toronto, the march that they went on. They stopped at a bunch of media outlets and they started chanting "shame on you" to Bell Media. Like, people know, people are wise to it. Anybody who's been paying attention knows that they put their blinders up and they're only looking at one thing and they're just regurgitating what the government wants them to. And it's honestly sad at this point.
Oh, it's beyond sad. But we got to pivot here. Topic points. We got our 20 minutes there. And moving on. Where is it? Okay, so for the record, I'm not trying to be provocative here. I'm just talking about a provocative paper. So we're about to talk about a paper that is mental illness is more prevalent among liberals, according to a research paper, not according to Greg Staley. Research paper. So the research paper here, titled "Mental Illness in the Left" by Emil O.W. Kirkgard from the Ulster Institute for Social Research. So this is their findings here. Where is it?
This is a weird study.
It is a very weird study. So they took these samples of 5 questions. They're self-answered questions. That's the first takeaway. So people answered these questions according to how they felt. Where's it at? Here we are. So of the largest question, 11,000 people, the difference in the mental health state, I don't want that. Okay, there it is. Within study meta-analysis of the results, found that extreme liberals had a 150% increased rate of mental illness compared to moderates. The finding of increased mental illness among left-wingers is congruent with numerous findings based on related constructs such as positive relationships between conservatism, religiousness, and health in general. So going through some of their reasons here why they think that could be, I didn't quite understand it. They don't really seem to understand it. They more so just seem to ask questions and pose hypotheses of what it could be. But essentially, even from slightly liberal.
Yeah, these are one of these studies. These are one of these studies that it's like, we studied this so other people might run with it. Because, like, here's some information. If you want to dig into this, dig into it. This is where we left off. That's kind of the way this study was presented.
No, here it is. So, okay, the results confirm the general pattern before, namely that a strong elevated risk of mental illness among extreme liberals, 150%. Small increase. They say small increase, but I don't think this is a small increase. Among slightly liberals, 29 to 32%. So it's almost 1/3, over a quarter. Like that's pretty drastic difference between conservative and not conservative. You know what I mean? Like liberal, conservative. That's the breakdown from slightly liberal to moderate. If as the middle ground. But breaking the pattern, slightly conservatives had a marginally increased rate. So if you're slightly conservative, you had a marginally increased rate compared to conservatives, and extreme conservatives or moderates for mental illness. But overall, 150% more likely to have mental illness reported as an extreme liberal or slightly liberal, 29 to 32%. So that's the research paper there. Your thoughts, and maybe tread carefully.
Like if I was studying this, you would have to, it's like one of those things that it's like, this is such a surface scratch that it would like, okay, well, what is the demographic of a liberal then? How many male, how many female? Is there something to, because we know males generally don't disclose mental health. It's more likely that a female would disclose that. So like, is there something there that we could pick up a study in that direction? Or is it, people on the left are more supportive of coming out and talking about mental health, or is it something? There's certain jobs that people on the left are driven into that they dominate those markets. Are those jobs creating an environment where, or is it the fear of like being sexist, being racist, all those things that the left is very sensitive to, in which we all should be, but they're more sensitive to and bring it into the headlines a lot more than the conservatives do, right? So is there something there that could be the stress of that could add to this? It's just such a surface scratch. You're really just like trying to grasp at straws on this study that it's interesting. That's really all this study is. It's like a surface scratch. It's interesting. Where do you go from here with this study? I would think you would have to dig into what makes up a liberal, what makes up conservative, what sectors of the economy do they work in, what beliefs and so on and so forth go down, and see what stresses or things that could give a rise into poor mental health into those before you could ever make a conclusion on like the generalization of this.
You'd have to do even male to female, and they'd have to be in the same occupation, and then it would be a set difference of ideological beliefs, and then you'd go do the study. I would think that would be, yeah. Right now, you nailed it. It's a surface scratch. It's something to point to and say maybe there's something there, but it does back other evidence of conservatives tend to be more happy. There is like a lot of circumstantial evidence like that out there. It is, yeah. Religious people tend to be happier. Like truthfully, like there's study. I was just reading some psychology papers and stuff, research papers from psychological outlets, and that's kind of what they're saying. Like it is kind of known that, and they hypothesize it's like something to do with the family, the meaning, because typically conservatives will have kids younger, and they put more of a priority maybe on family as compared to a liberal on average. I'm not saying that a liberal person doesn't put priority in family. I'm just saying on average, perhaps it's all these things, right?
They're just generalizations, because you're looking at like the majority of the population of that sector, right? Like it's not like you're just like trying to slam these biases on people, but there studies and reports that come out. And so, I mean, it's the same as like the pay gap discussion in terms of like the surface scratch. Like you can just come out and say that women make less, but it's like, okay, well, why?
Yeah,
right. This is kind of the same presentation as like liberals have poor mental health in comparison to conservatives. But your first question is why, and it hasn't answered that. Like there are studies that answer the pay gap, but like I don't want to dig into that because it's controversial. But
yeah. That's putting it lightly. It's definitely controversial. No, the pay gap thing is so, people don't even want to talk. Like that's how toxic politics is in the general environment around society and culture now. People don't even want to have conversations about what they think about things for fear of being demonized. And it's especially, I will get people all the time, Paul. I haven't had this conversation with you, but I always scope comments on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, see what people are saying. And if somebody shares a heartfelt story that I would like to report on, I often message them. And it's often that people will find out that I'm an official media outlet and they don't want to report because they're worried about the consequences that might come back to them. And it happens all the time. I would say 80-90% of the time I get shot down, it's usually that way.
It was a recent study that came out that said 80% of people are scared to express their opinions and because of like online mobs, essentially. So yeah, I could see that. Like, you don't want to get canceled or whatever they call it these days. Especially when like your work can just look up your social media and see what's going on, what you're talking about, and there's a lot on the line to do something like that. So I can see that's just the line of work we're in right now. Is you're not obligated to, and there's consequences if you do potentially. So yeah.
And the greater the professional, like the more hard it was to obtain their position in life, the more I get that response. Like all the time, you get people like, "Oh, you can blow the lid up on this. You're a child psychologist, or you're this, you're that." I've had these conversations, and I can't risk that. I'll lose my everything. I just, you know what I mean?
At best, you get an insider who will give you some information but they want to remain anonymous. You don't ever get a face for blow the lid off stories, that's for sure. And then when you do, they're kind of like, yeah, I don't work there anymore. Or, yeah.
The threat's been removed. That's why they'll speak. All right, let's move on here to it.
I don't blame them.
Last story of the day, but this is one obviously controversial. I'm getting word that it's not just Toyota, but Toyota is exposing how hypocritical our government is and how hypocritical these measures are. So if I'm understanding this correctly, we have the article in front of us. Toyota workers in Cambridge, Woodstock are being told to self-isolate, but they're allowed to return to work. So essentially promised to me that you'll go home after you're done work and you'll social distance at work and it's a-okay. Now, there was roughly 150 employees that were exposed to somebody, the actual tester allegedly had it. But they said it was okay because she's wearing a surgical mask and medical gloves. So we can open, this is the takeaway here, is we can open Ontario tomorrow, open your business tomorrow. You just need to wear a medical face shield and medical gloves and then just go home. And your workers can be slaves and just go to work and do nothing else. We could open the whole province that way. But anyways, this is Toyota doing this, and obviously it's going to spread if they can continue to do it. But what's your take on this?
My take is they're probably right. This was I guess an occupational health nurse who, is suited up to basically not spread any germs doing these tests, limited exposure for a limited period of time. They deemed it as a low risk, and it probably was. My issue with it is this is slippery slope that now, like, hey, if I just get a third party to come in and test my people every day and someone tests positive, I can find a way to just spin that narrative to the testers that, hey, you guys are exposed to these positive cases all day, every day, and now one of my guys is positive, then they can deem it a low risk, and then I can just open the doors, or I can just wear this PPE and I'm good. Because I guarantee you that's not the case. If every one of your employees was wearing this, they would still not, because they'd be like, well, we can't prove you were definitively wearing it properly or all the time as soon as you walked in the door. Like, it just, to me, it's a slippery slope on, it's just not a good look. They obviously haven't been advertising this work home isolation thing for a reason, because it looks bad. The optics of it are really bad. And like, I don't know what to make of it. I'm sure, like, to me, they're right. They're right. There's not a lot of exposure here. But if you make the exception here, now it's a slippery slope, right? Now we're looking at everything through this lens. And where's the line drawn? Is it drawn just with nurses and doctors? Like, I get why you do this in the hospital, because they have this in the hospital, the nurses and doctors, that, like, if you were in this situation, it's the same thing. It's a work home. And the point of that is, like, you can't just, like, send 150 nurses home from a hospital and tell them to sit in their house for 14 days. People would die. Factory workers aren't killing anybody by not building RAV4s. So it's, you know what I mean? Like, where, like, it's like, where does it start? Where does it end? It opens up the door for people to take advantage of this policy. That's where I'm at with it. I don't know. Toyota also put in this mandatory testing. They've been super careful for these reasons. They're worried about the optics, their environment. There's a lot of people in those doors. They don't want an outbreak. It's easy to have one with an environment like that. So, like, they invested millions to have testing done. They talked about making it mandatory, then backpedaled and said, no, it's optional, which was good. But yeah, I don't know. They're a company that gets raked publicly over the coals because, you know, big bad company versus the little guy. And I don't know if they didn't do anything wrong here. And let's put that out there with Toyota. They're just following guidelines here. But to me, it's the guidelines that's like, that seems wonky. That seems counter to everything I've heard and dealt with within my own workplace.
Yeah,
I know we weren't wearing that PPE, but why aren't we? Why aren't you advertising that we need to? I don't understand.
So I don't have any issue with Toyota. Open up. And I was thinking about, like, how would you handle this? How would I want it handled?
That's the question.
It's not Toyota's. Yeah, Toyota's not at fault. And all that should have happened is, okay, there's an exposure. Maybe what should have happened is maybe they take a day sick leave and see if they develop, or 2 days sick leave or something, see if they develop any symptoms. Or they go to a doctor for a physician appointment and they get actually accessed because they've been exposed. Right? Or we run a PCR test and we run it at below 25 cycles and see if it's actually infectious. That would be another one. Actually send it off to a microbiology lab, ensure that these people might actually have something that's infectious. Not even COVID, but something that's infectious. So I think the issue is like Toyota's not the bad guy here. They're running a business trying to make a profit. And of course, like they're trying to stay open. The protocol itself, yeah, you're going to get people that look at that and they say, well, then it's like big business can benefit because if I hire a tester, I can spin it. So then you're going to find people that might try to take advantage of the system. But furthermore, I just don't think it's a good way to run business. Like if none of those 150 employees develop any symptoms, all you've done is turned an entire factory upside down, turn 100 plus families' lives upside down, turn their, you know what I mean? Lost a bunch of tax income as a result. And so why are we high-fiving like that's the right approach? That's not the right approach. Now, if you're still trying to take an extra precaution, that's where the question comes. It's like, how do you take those extra precautions and not intercede and overstep in a way that would piss people off and really step on the lines of freedom? Did it just delay out here?
Like the irony in this is that they hired a third party to do testing to be safe, and the third party was the one that brought it into the building. They went above and beyond to try and remain safe, and I don't blame them. Like, let's not get it twisted. Every business out there is trying to do business. That's what they want.
Yep.
This COVID stuff is just hurting that bottom line, and they want to keep it out of the building just as much as employees don't want it in the building because, like, they want to make money. So, and employees don't want to get sick. So, I don't know. I don't know what it just goes to show you can go as far as you want in terms of these restrictions, and it's not preventing it from getting in the building.
Well,
same as the
lockdowns, is a fundamental issue. It's everywhere, guys. The virus is out in the air. You're out. It's inside of your body right now. You have viruses in you. It doesn't mean it's activated. But this is the thing. With the PCR test, you can amplify that so much that you can take a healthy person, make them, oh, you got a positive test and you're sick, and then you drive fear on that. And you can keep taking it so far. That person I'll take it as far as to say, I'm curious if the tester herself even develops symptoms. Because they're testing her probably every day as a result of her job. So she probably just, you know what I mean? They say it's a low chance of infection. It's probably because she was healthy. And then she COVID positive, right? Don't diagnose with this, but yeah, like, where do you draw that line? It's unbelievable. 150 people had their lives turned upside down. Likely, who knows? We don't even get to know if the person who took the initial test even developed symptoms. And how many families had their lives upside down, lost income, lost tax income, less money into the system as a result?
Well, they did it with the schools, right? Where they sent 100 kids home and no one tested positive. Like, you can say it's an abundance of caution, or you can say it's a waste of time. Those are the two perspectives, right? But like, the difference with schools is it's not hurting that bottom line as much as it is with companies like Toyota, right? Like, a lot of money lost, a lot of wages lost, a lot of tax dollars not coming in. Yeah, it's like I said, same as the lockdowns. Same as the lockdowns. Like, you can try all you want, but you can't keep it out. Like, should we be taking precautions? Sure, but like, just because you're going over the top crazy with these restrictions doesn't mean it will work. Like, it's very hard, especially indoors in large crowds, to not transmit anything. The cold, influenza, COVID. Like, the more you do, it doesn't necessarily result in positive results, right? Like,
and if the government of Canada really wanted cases to fall, and if they really cared about Canadians' health, they would have drove at, hey guys, it's summer, and they would have like some Richard Simmons type out there with a Canadian government shirt on, leading people in exercise, and they'd be putting out stuff to try to promote physical activity and good healthy eating and getting out and getting sunshine, right? Because we know that these are a lot of the correlations in extreme cases is like physical activity, obesity is often a comorbidity, diabetes, all these things. So diet and exercise, if they would have promoted those, who knows how many we could have saved.
we just go straight Orwellian and have our morning
Yeah.
exercises every day. And
Just like Orwell's 1984. There's going to be a voice
Yeah.
through your TV. Hello, citizen.
Time to get up.
Touch your toes.
Yep.
Oh, I forgot. As soon as I said that, I was like, yeah, they should have been promoting it. As soon as you said it, it was like, oh, yeah, that's Orwell. 1984.
That's why it's on the tip of my tongue. No, that's crazy talk. But it's I mean, there's like in terms of health, yeah. I mean, if you want to be healthy, do what healthy people do, which is exercise and eat well and eat well-rounded diets and not smoke, not be overweight, not, you know what I mean? Like some of these things are preventable, but we're not trying to prevent them. We haven't looked at them at all.
Government body breaks. That's what we need to stop COVID. Body break.
Hal Johnson, Joanne McLeod need to be leading us right now out of this COVID battle.
That honestly, the government wants my trust back on side. Bring out Hal and bring out Val from Body Break, and they head up the new COVID task force. Now I'll start listening again. All right, here's what I remember. Mom had that treadmill, the one with no power. It was like mechanical, and the belt slipped all the time. It was only good if you're like maybe 220 pounds. So if you were like a full-size person on that thing, oh, it was bad. Body Break. Anyways, I have to force myself to laugh because it's just all right.
That's all we got left.
That's everything. That's the whole show. All right, for everybody here, this is the Sunday show. We do upload this to Spotify afterwards. You can find us there if you want to watch us at work, etc. But every Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have unfiltered conversations like this where we have these honest conversations. We're willing to be wrong and just look at the evidence and examine it and see what it's saying and present things that aren't being covered in the mainstream narrative, which is pretty easy to do these days, eh, Paul? It's not hard to find a niche.
Not at all. It's used to be a lot of digging. Now it's like right in your face. Like, yeah, that's what we do. We present the information as fact, and then we kind of give our take on it. And, you know, we're always going to come with facts and then give our little spiel of what we think about it. But it's coming from a place of fact. And all these stories, we link and cite all of these things in the videos, in our articles. So, but yeah, we are looking for advertisers. If you're a small business,
yes.
Well,
I have that email actually. Let me just pull it up. I made an email. If you are looking to advertise with Diverge Media, we made it as simple as possible. It is literally advertise with Diverge Media at outlook.com. All right. So I'm going to put that in the comment section here. But if you want to just continue that thought, Paul, as I'm doing this.
But yeah, with like small businesses that are struggling, if you have an online website that you think we can help drive an audience to or potential purchasers to, hit us up. We'll give a heavy discount to make sure that you guys are taken care of. We're all struggling right now. Least we can do here at Diverge is, put the good word out, I guess. And, if you're watching us right now, you can see in the top right of our screen, we have the Diverge logo. That could be your logo. So,
so just as an example here, any logo you want, right? You can swap out there. But that could be your logo, top right. As far as our work goes, divergemedia.ca, that is where a lot of our traffic is. We're willing to put ads directly into our articles and work with you on that. So to speak with numbers, if that's something you're interested, or speak about our numbers and kind of what to look for, advertise with Diverge Media at outlook.com. So that is one of the things we're pushing. And just an update here for you, I guess, as well. But working with the designer on a t-shirt design, already burned through one designer, was not too impressed with his level of effort. And so I've learned in business that I don't waste time anymore. So he got burnt immediately and fired. So I'm back in the designs, but I'm working with another one. We should have something out in the next month or two. We're looking at t-shirts, 2 designs, and we're looking at bumper stickers is the other one. So
car magnets,
Diverge,
yeah.
if you got Yeah, if you have ideas, this is the other thing. I want my community to be a part of the merch development. So if you have ideas on merch, a t-shirt idea or a bumper magnet idea, let us know. We were looking at, for instance, the upcoming election. We might go with lawn signs that say "Don't elect idiots," something like that. So, all ideas that you have that you think would be interesting, curious, leave them in the comments section, and who knows, maybe your idea ends up as one of the focal points on our merch.
Yeah, for us, like, we run this business on support from viewers and advertising, and want to keep continuing to bring this stuff to you. So instead of just asking for money, we're trying to offer you something that you can take with you. And we're also trying to do some good with this advertising. So if you're interested, hit us out.
Yep. Well, for everybody that's just getting introduced to us, I mean, we've been at this for over a year now. We're getting to a point where people are starting to recognize work, and we're looking at those next steps. We're going to be bursting onto the scene here in the next year or two. You're going to be hearing Diverge Media with the other main independents. It's just a reality. We're coming. Get ready for it. So part of that process is obviously we need to get finances in shape, and that means advertising, and that means selling merch. And so we're going through these steps. It's a difficult process, but yeah, we're going through that process. It's going good. But it's a process, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. But I'm excited about where we're going. It's just to watch the growth, and even in the last 3 months, we surpassed our traffic for all of last year within 2 months and 6 days this year. So we did over 60,000 in 2 months on the website, and that's exponential growth, and it's actually going up still. We were watching those numbers again. So very excited. People are starting to notice. And I said this a long time ago, but if you do good work long enough, eventually people will notice. So part of the next steps, as I was saying, I lost my train of thought there, but is getting insurance. And we're going to be looking for correspondents to be on the ground. So if that is something you may be interested in the future, reach out to divergemedia@outlook.com with your resume. We will be looking for video editors. If you're somebody who has proper video editing software programs, we're looking for somebody who can put the professional touches on our live streams and on our videos. And so these are the type of things we're going to be looking for, as well as guest correspondent columnists. So if you're somebody who has an ability to write politically, or there's something that you're very passionate about and well researched in, consider reaching out again to divergemedia@outlook.com, and we'll talk about featuring your work. So we're looking to grow here, and it's because we're covering stories that matter. Truth falls where it falls, and we need to have these unbiased conversations, and it needs to be at the forefront of Canadian politics. And that's what this company, I hope, can be about.
Yeah, I think we're really at that turning point, right? Where like we need to do these things because like traffic has increased exponentially over the last little bit, that it's time to crank it up. If we don't make these adjustments, we'll get left behind and won't be able to keep up with it. But we don't want to lose our viewer and that connection that we have with the live streams, and like being able to chat back and forth with our viewers and staying in touch with them and helping them out while growing the business. So we're trying to keep that while we do grow. And yeah, like you said, we do good work, so people are noticing. It's kind of wild to see like some of our articles pop up in videos we watch, and
wow, yeah. It's been wild for me. I had this conversation, but let's just close out on a happy thought, I guess. I started this, and I was just doing it because it was the right thing to do, and I had to have my say, right? And for people that don't know the history here, I was a reservist in the Canadian Armed Forces. I had to leave. It was my plan to make a career in the Canadian Armed Forces. I qualify for every position in the CAF. Except for, ironically, public relations and pilots. So they said, Greg, you can't do public relations. But okay. So I had to leave, and then I started this because you can't have any political affiliations in the military. And so I left what I thought was going to be my career, what I was going to make into my career for this. And then just the things that have happened as a result, the people that have shared articles, conversations I've had with different people, people that I've met. It's crazy. You don't, I mean, and for people that are on the fence, maybe you're thinking about starting your own thing, start it. You just put the effort in, be disciplined and consistent, and you'll be amazed at everybody can make a difference. I truly believe that, but it does take work. And just seeing, I just feel blessed, man. It's been a crazy year and a bit, and the stuff I've got to experience and witness, people I've got to meet and talk with, I do feel genuinely blessed, and I'm excited for the next year. I really am. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. I look forward to the next Sunday show, and we'll go at it again.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers until the next one.